So I recently went through something I wouldn't have believed if someone else told me. A story so absurd, so heavy with entitlement and hidden malice that it could only happen in a neighborhood like Oak Crest. You know the type, perfect lawns, spotless driveways, pastel houses that all look the same. On the surface, it's peaceful, safe. But my wife has a theory. She says every square foot of a flawless lawn hides an equal square foot of crazy inside the house. And she was right. More right than I ever wanted her to be. I should have known from the very first letter. It was sitting under the wiper blade of my truck like a ticket from hell, cream-colored paper sealed with a shiny gold sticker shaped like an oak tree. My wife, Maya, stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, eyebrows already raised. "What's this?" she asked, suspicion dripping from every word. I opened the envelope, already bracing myself, but even I wasn't ready for what it said. According to Section C, Paragraph 4 of the bylaws, my trash cans, our two plain green city bins, had been visible from the street for more than 12 hours after pickup. That was our violation, our crime against the Kingdom of Beige, and because of it we now had a warning. A fine would follow if we dared to repeat this sin. At the bottom, in big, loopy script, was the signature, Karen Whitfield, HOA President. I read it out loud. Maya's expression shifted from disbelief to fury like a storm cloud ripping open without warning. Visible from the street, "Daniel, the cans are behind the hedges. You'd need to be a giraffe or a snooping giraffe to even see them." She paced the driveway, letter crumpled in her fist. 9 hours, that's all we were over. 9 hours. I tried to laugh it off. Well, at least it's not armed robberies anymore, just weaponized boredom. But Maya wasn't laughing, she wasn't even close. Her voice dropped, sharp and serious. "This isn't about trash cans, it's a test, a probe. We're the only black family on this block, and she wants to see how much she can get away with." And I knew she was right. 15 years as a homicide detective had taught me to recognize patterns. Probes always come before escalation. Still, I thought maybe the smart thing to do was ignore it. Move the cans, let it go, give her nothing to feed on, but Maya just shook her head. "You don't get it. People like this don't get bored, they escalate." At the time, I thought she was exaggerating. That all Oak Crest really wanted from me was neatly cut grass and friendly waves at block parties. But Maya saw it for what it was, a chessboard. And Karen had just made her first move. The irony is we hadn't moved here for war. Oak Crest was supposed to be our escape. After years in the city, grinding through murders and tragedies, I wanted quiet, a porch swing, a backyard big enough for barbecues, and maybe a little peace. The house gave me all of that, and one thing more, room for my pride and joy. A fully restored 1967 cherry red Mustang. That car wasn't just chrome and horsepower. It was my therapy, my reset button. Every bolt I turned was like stitching myself back together after another brutal day. For 8 months, life in Oak Crest was almost perfect. We had friendly neighbors, backyard cookouts, even the local oddball, neighbor Louie with his Hawaiian shirts and endless gossip. He was quirky, harmless, or so I thought. One afternoon, while I polished the Mustang's bumper, Louie wandered over, lowered his voice, and asked, "You met the Queen yet?" "The Queen?" I asked, confused. "Karen Whitfield," he said, nodding toward the big white house on the corner. "Runs this place like her personal kingdom. Cross her and she'll measure your grass with a ruler. Just keep your head down." I chuckled at the warning. Surely he was exaggerating. Every neighborhood has a busybody, right? But the trash can letter was still sitting on our counter like an unexploded bomb, and I couldn't shake the thought that maybe Louie wasn't joking. Still, I wanted to believe Oak Crest was what we dreamed of. Safe, peaceful, a place where the loudest sound at night was the refrigerator hum. But as Maya kept reminding me, Karen wasn't going to stop at trash cans. And she was right, because the real storm was only just beginning. Everyone saw the gleam of my Mustang in the driveway that Saturday, but no one saw the storm heading straight toward me. It was one of those perfect afternoons, the kind that makes you forget trouble even exists. The sky was endless blue, soul music hummed softly from the radio, and I was lost in the rhythm of polishing chrome. For once, I felt at peace. That's when he appeared, a young man, maybe 19, strolling down the sidewalk with the smug confidence of someone who's never been told no in his life. Polo shirt collar popped, khaki shorts, boat shoes. The kind of kid who thinks rules were made for other people. He stopped at the edge of my driveway and just stared, not at me, at the Mustang. I gave him a polite nod. "Afternoon." He ignored the greeting, eyes crawling over the car like he was appraising property he already owned. And then the sneer came, curling on his lips like a signature. I recognized him immediately. Bryce Whitfield, Karen's son, the so-called crown prince of Oak Crest. Nice car, he said finally, but the way he said it wasn't admiration, it was accusation. Before I could respond, he stepped onto my driveway, bold, uninvited. He dragged his hand across the freshly waxed fender, leaving a greasy smudge that made my eye twitch. Funny, he muttered, looks exactly like the one my dad used to have. A '67 Mustang, cherry red, just like this one. I set the rag down slowly, my instincts whispering, this wasn't casual conversation, this was something darker. A classic, I said evenly. Lots of people love them. Yeah, he smirked, but this one's ours. His eyes locked on mine, dripping with arrogance. I don't know how you got it, but my mom's the HOA president. We run things here, so I'm gonna need the keys. For a second, my brain couldn't even process it. The sheer stupidity, the audacity, it was like hearing a dog recite Shakespeare. My jaw tightened, my voice dropped low. Son, you're on my property, you just touched my car, and you're saying the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. Walk away. But he didn't move. He leaned in closer, venom in his words. Look, immigrant, I'm not asking. That car's ours. My mom said if I ever saw it, I should take it back. So, keys now. That was the line, that one word, immigrant. My blood turned to ice. I could feel the fury boiling, ready to break free. But before I could answer, a shrill voice cut through the air. Bryce, get away from him. He's dangerous. Karen Whitfield herself came marching up the street like a queen charging into battle, tennis whites pristine, visor angled just so. She clutched her phone like a weapon. I'm calling 911, she screeched, voice quivering with manufactured fear. Then she put it on speaker, making sure I heard every word. Yes, police. There's a suspicious male at 142 Oak Drive. He's trying to steal our car. My son confronted him, and I think he might be armed. Please hurry. My chest tightened. She wasn't bluffing. She had just called the police on me. Me, Chief of Police Daniel Reyes. I didn't move, didn't speak, just crossed my arms. I could see Maya standing at the front door now, eyes wide, phone in hand, already recording. My smart, fiery wife, always ready. Karen's smug smile spread like wildfire. She thought she had me cornered, the black man with the nice car, the one who dared to live in her kingdom. She thought she was about to watch her private police force drag me away. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. And instead of fear, I felt something else, a strange, calm certainty. Karen Whitfield had no idea who I was. She had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The cruisers screeched around the corner, lights blazing. 6 officers spilled out, hands on their weapons, eyes scanning for the threat. Karen's performance reached a fever pitch, tears, shaking voice, finger pointed right at me. That man stole our car, arrest him. But then the lead officer froze, his eyes locked on mine. Confusion rippled across his face, then recognition. One by one, the others saw it too. Chief, Officer Miller's voice cracked with disbelief. Karen's head snapped between us, fury and confusion colliding. Chief, what are you talking about? He's a thief, arrest him. But it was already over, she just didn't know it yet. The world seemed to hold its breath. 6 officers stood frozen, staring at me as if reality had slipped sideways. Karen's triumphant smile faltered, confusion creeping in as she realized something wasn't right. Afternoon, Miller, Chen, Davis, I said calmly, my voice carrying the weight of quiet authority. Beautiful day, isn't it? The officers exchanged looks, recognition spreading like wildfire. Karen, however, doubled down. Her voice rose, shrill and desperate. Don't listen to him. He's lying. He stole our car. It was my husband's. My son recognized it. He's dangerous. She didn't notice Bryce inching toward the Mustang, his face flushed with entitlement. I'll handle it, Mom, he muttered, grabbing for the door handle. Sir, step away from the vehicle, Officer Davis barked, his training snapping into gear. Bryce flinched, stumbling back, and fell hard onto my lawn, boat shoes flying. It would have been comical if the air hadn't been so thick with tension. Karen gasped, her performance cracking. For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. I turned to Miller, my voice level official. This woman knowingly filed a false police report. She claimed I stole my own car, registered to me Daniel Reyes, Chief of Police. Her son just attempted to unlawfully enter my vehicle. All of this is on your body cams. I suggest you check them. Silence, then Miller's expression hardened, the weight of betrayal settling across his face. Ma'am, he said, his tone flat, is this true? Is this car not yours? Karen's words sputtered like a dying engine. Well, no, but it looks just like one we had, and he looked suspicious, so. Her excuse evaporated in the air, pathetic and weak. Officer Davis helped Bryce to his feet, his patience razor-thin. "You're telling me you tried to steal a car in front of 6 cops?" Bryce's swagger was gone. He stared at the ground, shoulders slumped like a scolded child. Karen looked around, desperate for support, but the neighbors were already peeking from behind curtains, phones in hand, recording every second. The perfect Queen of Oak Crest was unraveling on her own stage. Miller's voice cut through like a hammer. "Davis, cuff him. Attempted grand theft auto." The click of the handcuffs closing around Bryce's wrists was like music, sharp and final. Karen let out a strangled cry, lunging forward. "No, he's just a boy." He didn't mean it. But it was too late. Her kingdom was crumbling. Maya stepped onto the porch, recording still rolling, her eyes locked on mine. There was pride in her gaze, fierce and unwavering. This was proof, not just of Karen's corruption, but of her cruelty. Miller turned back to me, his face etched with apology. "Chief, we had no idea." I put a steady hand on his shoulder. "You did your job, Miller. You responded to the call, and you handled it once the facts came out. Don't apologize for doing your duty." Karen stood shaking, rage and humiliation twisting her face. She looked at me like a cornered animal, venom dripping from her glare. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't the end. Because people like Karen don't learn from humiliation. They marinate in it. They let it fester. And when it's ready, they come back sharper, meaner, more dangerous. The officers led Bryce to the cruiser. The neighbors whispered behind glass. Maya lowered her phone, her jaw tight. We had won the battle, but she was right. This wasn't over. As the squad cars pulled away, I caught Karen's eyes one last time. That look wasn't defeat. It was a promise, a vow that she would strike back. And deep down, I knew she would. The neighborhood was buzzing for days after the Mustang incident. Whispers floated across lawns, curtains twitched when I walked past. Some neighbors gave me small nods of approval, even a few thumbs up. Others just stared, as if I were some exotic animal they weren't sure belonged in their tidy zoo. But the Whitfield house, it went silent. The blinds stayed shut. The immaculate white facade seemed to retreat from the street. To most, it looked like Karen had been humbled. To me, it looked like she was waiting. People like her don't lick wounds, they sharpen claws. Maya saw it too. "She's wounded," she said one night, packing the living room. "We can't wait for her next move. We have to finish this. We have to get her out of the HOA." I sank into my armchair, exhaustion pulling at my bones. And how exactly do we do that? Being a terrible person isn't grounds for impeachment, not even in an HOA. But even as I said it, my mind was working. The way Karen had called in a false police report so easily, so naturally, it told me something. People that arrogant don't just bend rules, they break them. Somewhere in the HOA's books, there had to be a trail. So I went digging. By law, members are entitled to see the HOA's financials. I sent a polite email, carefully worded, requesting the past 2 years of records. I copied the whole board just to make sure it couldn't vanish into a black hole. A week later, I got a reply from Gerald, the treasurer. Vague, stalling. "Your request is under review." Wrong answer. I fired back, citing state statutes word for word. Within 24 hours, a password-protected folder landed in my inbox. They thought they were calling my bluff. They had no idea who they were dealing with. For the next 3 nights, our dining table became a war room. Stacks of papers, laptops glowing, mugs of coffee cooling. At first, it was mind-numbing. Line after line of landscaping bills, pool maintenance, insurance. The kind of bureaucratic fog designed to hide sins in plain sight. "Maybe she's clean," I muttered on the second night, rubbing my eyes. "Maybe she's just a racist tyrant with no paper trail." But Maya shook her head, unrelenting. "No, the devil is in the details, and that woman is definitely renting him a room." She was right. On the 3rd night, I found it. A line item, community security patrols, $5,000 a month, approved 6 months ago, right after Karen became president. The vendor, Oakrest Secure Solutions, LLC. I frowned, too neat, too generic. I pulled up the state business registry. The company was real, registered 7 months ago, and the listed agent, Pamela Whitfield, Karen's sister. "Maya," I said, my voice low, almost reverent, "I think I found it." Her eyes darted to the screen. She read the name and her lips parted. "She's funneling money to her own family. That's fraud, clear as day." But it went deeper. The invoices listed hours worked by individual patrol officers. Most of the names were blacked out, except one early invoice. Karen had missed a redaction. And there it was, Bryce Whitfield, along with 3 of his friends. I stared at the page, fury simmering. The so-called security patrols weren't protecting the neighborhood. They were the loitering, the vandalism, the chaos. Karen had manufactured a threat, then paid her delinquent son to guard us from it, using our money. $40,000 gone in half a year. It was elegant in its depravity, a circle of corruption feeding itself, and I had the receipts. I leaned back in my chair, every nerve in my body humming. She's not just a tyrant, she's a criminal. Maya's eyes burned with satisfaction. So we take it public. At the next HOA meeting, we bring this out. We burn her kingdom down in front of everyone. A part of me wanted that. God, I wanted that, to watch her face crack as the truth poured out. But another part, the chief, knew better. If I turned it into a personal war, I risked tainting the entire case. This isn't just HOA drama anymore, I said quietly. This is fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. It has to be airtight, professional, clean. Maya clenched her jaw, disappointed, but she nodded. So we do it right. We build the case. We don't just knock her down. We make sure she can't get back up. For the first time since the trash can letter, I felt something shift. This wasn't about peace anymore. This was about justice, and I intended to see it through. The silence before the storm always feels heavier than the storm itself. For 2 weeks, Oakcrest looked calm. Too calm. Neighbors smiled politely, lawns stayed perfect, and Karen's blinds never once opened. But behind that fake serenity, I could feel something brewing. And then it broke. It was 2 in the morning when the crash came, a shattering explosion of glass from the front of our house. Maya jolted upright, eyes wide, heart pounding. I was already moving. Years of instinct don't fade. I crept to the window and peered through the blinds. 4 figures in hoodies, moving across my lawn like shadows. One spray-painted an ugly red stripe across the garage. Another hurled a rock through the front picture window. Shards glittered across our floor like ice. And then my stomach turned to stone. 2 of them stood over my Mustang, my therapy, my pride. One poured paint stripper over the hood, the gleaming cherry red finish sizzling and bubbling into ruin. The other raised a crowbar, slamming it into the windshield again and again. White-hot rage consumed me. My hand went to the nightstand where my service weapon was locked. For a terrifying second, all I wanted was to storm out and end it right there like I would have 20 years ago. But then Maya's voice, firm, steady. "Daniel, no." Her grip on my arm was iron. "That's what they want. They want you angry. They want you to look like the monster she called 911 about." She was right, and thank God she was. We had cameras, 4 discreet, high-def lenses covering every inch of the property. Karen's goons thought they were terrifying us in the dark, but they were starring in their own crime scene movie, every frame recorded in crystal clarity. We crouched back from the broken window listening, spray paint hissing, glass shattering, laughter echoing in the night. And then they ran, hoodies bobbing, sneakers pounding the pavement until silence fell again. The only sound left was the faint drip of paint stripper eating into my Mustang's hood. I walked slowly to my office, fury shaking my hands, and pulled up the footage. And there it was, perfect. Every smirk, every swing of the crowbar, I zoomed in, faces caught under the infrared. And my blood boiled all over again. Bryce Whitfield, his buddies, the very same names listed on those fake security invoices. They weren't just vandals, they were on the clock. We, the community, were literally paying them to destroy my property. "I've got them," I whispered, Maya's hand resting on my shoulder. "I've got them all." The rage inside me cooled into something sharper, something lethal. This wasn't just about trash cans or false calls anymore. This was criminal conspiracy, caught red-handed. But fate wasn't done with me yet. As I replayed the footage frame by frame, something caught my eye, a shape, a figure standing further down the street, half hidden in the shadow of an oak, watching, phone pressed to their ear. At first it was just a silhouette, but then the figure stepped into the faint glow of a street lamp. My stomach dropped. Even in grainy night vision, the pattern was unmistakable. A Hawaiian shirt. My mind reeled. I zoomed in, heart hammering. It was him, neighbor Louis, the harmless gossip, the quirky old man who had warned me about Karen. At 2:14 a.m., the exact timestamp of the vandalism, my phone log showed a missed call from Louis. I had assumed it was a warning, but the footage told a darker story. He wasn't calling from his porch. He was standing right there, supervising. The realization slammed into me like a freight train. Louis wasn't just gossip, he wasn't harmless, he was in this, deep. And suddenly everything we'd built, every scrap of evidence, every plan to bring down Karen, felt like it was sitting on a fault line. Because what if the true mastermind wasn't the Queen of Oak Crest at all? What if it was the man everyone trusted the most? The truth has a way of twisting the ground beneath your feet, making everything you thought was solid feel like sand. That night, staring at the grainy footage of Louis in his garish Hawaiian shirt, phone pressed to his ear as my car was torn apart, I felt the ground vanish. It couldn't be, it shouldn't be. Louis was supposed to be the harmless gossip, the neighborhood's comic relief, the man who handed out advice about deer and marigolds, the one I trusted to help me rally the other families. But the evidence didn't lie. He wasn't watching in horror. He was orchestrating, supervising. My mind started spinning, reassembling every moment we'd shared. His first warning about Karen, his encyclopedic knowledge of her every move, his eagerness to help. None of it was random, it was strategy. I went back to the HOA's financials, my fingers trembling. Karen's fake security company stood out like a neon sign. But what about before she took power? I scrolled further back into the previous year. And there it was, a small anomaly. $500 a month to LG Horticultural Consulting. It had looked harmless, landscaping advice, pest control, but the initials nagged at me now. LG. Louis Garcia. My chest tightened. I pulled the business record, a sole proprietorship, owner and sole employee, Louis himself. He'd been skimming from the HOA for years, just small amounts, just enough to slip under the radar, a little bonus month after month, and then Karen got elected. Ambitious, arrogant, racist Karen, she must have discovered his petty scheme. Maybe she threatened him. Maybe he saw her greed as an opportunity, but either way he turned her into a puppet. The bigger her corruption, the safer he was. He pushed her to create the security company. He let her son and his friends run wild. She took all the risk, all the blame. He stayed in the shadows, pulling strings. It was brilliant and evil. I leaned back, the weight of it all pressing down on me. I hadn't just underestimated Louis. I had been playing right into his hands. By building a case against Karen, by rallying the neighbors with his help, I was doing his work for him. I was the knife he'd sharpened to cut his puppet loose when she became too dangerous. Karen was still guilty, still cruel, still corrupt. But she wasn't the mastermind, she was just the shield, the distraction, the villain we were supposed to see. Louis was the one behind the curtain. And now I faced a terrible truth. The HOA meeting was days away. The evidence I had against Karen was airtight, enough to end her reign. But if I stopped there, Louis would walk away clean. He'd be the hero, the man who helped me, the trusted neighbor who stood by my side. And once Karen was gone, he'd keep skimming, keep pulling strings, only deeper this time with no one left to stop him. Maya found me still staring at the screen, my thoughts a whirlwind. "What is it?" she whispered. I turned the laptop toward her, showed her the footage, showed her the business records. Her face drained of color, then hardened into something cold and sharp. "He played us." "Yes," my voice was low, steady. "Karen's a villain, but Louis is worse. He's been playing this game for years." Maya's eyes burned. "So we expose him, both of them." Easier said than done. Karen's guilt was obvious, documented. Louis' was older, smaller, buried under layers of charm. To most of the neighborhood, he was harmless Louis in his Hawaiian shirts. To accuse him without proof stronger than a faded invoice and a blurry night vision clip, it would sound insane. But I couldn't walk into that meeting and point fingers at only half the truth. If I did, I'd be handing him victory on a silver platter. The storm was building, and now I wasn't just up against Karen Whitfield, the self-proclaimed Queen of Oak Crest. I was up against her puppet master. The real villain. And he was smiling at me from across the street. The Oak Crest Community Center had never been this full. Usually the annual HOA meeting was a dull affair, a handful of neighbors grumbling about dues and hedges. But tonight the air was electric, every seat filled. People lined the walls, word had spread, something big was coming. At the front sat Karen Whitfield, the queen herself, flanked by the board. Her tennis-white smile was back, though I could see the tightness in her jaw. She thought she was ready. She thought this would be about the Mustang, about me complaining in front of the crowd. She had no idea what was coming. Maya squeezed my hand in the third row. "You're ready," she whispered. Her eyes were fire. I stood when the floor opened. The room hushed, all eyes swinging my way. I projected my voice, calm and steady. My name is Daniel Reyes. I live at 142 Oak Drive, and I move for a vote of no confidence in Karen Whitfield as HOA president on the grounds of gross financial mismanagement, fraud, and conspiracy. Gasps a ripple of outrage. Karen's smile cracked. That's slander, she snapped. You have no proof. Oh, but I do. Maya began handing out packets we prepared, summaries of the invoices, contracts, and payments. Neighbors flipped pages, eyes widening. Murmurs turned into shouts. For 6 months, I continued, our dues, your money, have been funneled into a fake security company owned by Karen's sister. $40,000 stolen, and the so-called security patrols, her son Bryce and his friends, the same boys you've seen loitering, vandalizing, disrupting the neighborhood, paid with our money. The room erupted, neighbors on their feet, fingers pointing, Karen's face drained of color. That's not, she stammered, drowned out by the crowd. But that's not all. I held up my phone. 2 nights ago, these boys came to my house, and this, I connected to the projector, is what they did. The video filled the wall. Silence fell like a hammer as Bryce and his friends appeared, hoodies up, crowbars swinging, paint stripper pouring. The gasps were audible. Karen let out a strangled sob, her son's crimes larger than life behind her. Her kingdom collapsed in real time. But I wasn't done. I paused the video, turning slowly. My voice dropped low, cutting through the quiet. The thing is, Karen, I don't think this was your idea. It's a clever scam, yes, but not yours. You're greedy, you're prejudiced, but you're not a mastermind. Every head turned as I lifted my arm and pointed to the back of the room. To Louis, the harmless neighbor, the gossip, the man in the flamingo shirt. His smile froze. You've been here forever, Louis, I said, walking down the aisle toward him. You knew the books inside out. You'd already been stealing a little, $500 a month under LG Horticultural Consulting, just enough to fly under the radar. Then Karen took over. You found her weakness, her greed, and you turned her into your puppet. I switched the screen to the zoomed-in still from my security footage. Louis in the shadows, phone to his ear, watching my house being destroyed. The flamingo shirt impossible to miss. You didn't just skim, you orchestrated. You even supervised the vandalism yourself. Didn't you, Louis? The room exploded in shock. Louis's face drained, eyes darting for an exit. Karen, seeing her last chance at survival, broke. He made me, she shrieked, pointing at Louis with trembling hands. He found out about the wreath fine, the basketball hoop, everything. He threatened me. He forced me to sign those contracts. That was all it took. Louis bolted, shoving past chairs, knocking an elderly woman aside as he made for the emergency exit. Gasps, screams, pure chaos. But I wasn't unprepared. 2 off-duty officers, friends I'd quietly asked to attend, moved instantly. They cut him off outside, tackling him onto the grass near the tennis courts. I followed calmly, the crowd spilling after me. There he was, Louis, the so-called puppet master, cuffed in the dirt, flamingo shirt torn. The smile gone, replaced by rage and fear. The king of gossip, the secret thief, the hidden hand behind Karen's tyranny. Caught at last. 6 months later, Oak Crest looked like a different place. The lawns were still manicured, the houses still pastel perfect, but the air felt lighter, real peace, earned, not enforced. The night of the meeting had detonated like a bomb. Investigators swooped in within days, armed with a case file so complete it practically tied itself with a bow. Louis cracked first. Decades of playing puppet master dissolved in the interrogation room. He confessed. Blackmail, embezzlement, conspiracy, every detail matched what I'd uncovered. The Hawaiian shirts gave way to a prison jumpsuit. Karen fared no better. Faced with the evidence, she caved, bargaining for probation and fines in exchange for cooperation. She sold her grand White House, the one Louis had always called the wedding cake, to pay back the $40,000 stolen. She vanished in the dead of night with her son, humiliated and broken. And Bryce, the Prince of Oak Crest? He and his friends weren't so lucky, tried as adults, ordered to pay damages. Every cent of my Mustang's restoration came from their pockets. The car gleamed again, polished chrome and cherry red paint, but to me it wasn't just restored, it was reborn, a survivor just like us. Maya was elected HOA president by a landslide. At first she resisted. Who would want to step into that mess? But she took it on with fire and grace. The rules were simplified. The neighbors, once divided by suspicion and fear, began to come together. Potlucks, Volunteer days, a community garden blooming where arguments had once taken root. I'd watch her from the porch swing, clipboard in hand, sleeves rolled up, laughing with people who used to be strangers. She'd seen the storm coming long before I had. She'd been right all along, and I couldn't have been prouder. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she joined me on the swing, handing me a polished piece of chrome from the Mustang. "The board approved the garden today," she said, a satisfied smile tugging at her lips. "Feels like Oak Crest is finally ours, doesn't it?" I nodded, watching the last rays glint off the hood of my car. The neighborhood was quiet. No sirens, no shouting, just the hum of crickets and the soft sway of the swing. But in that silence, a question lingered, a question that had haunted me from the start. Can a good man stay good under pressure? That night when Karen called the cops, I could have lost it. When Bryce raised a crowbar over my Mustang, I could have snapped. And when I saw Louis's betrayal on that screen, part of me wanted to tear him apart with my own hands. But I hadn't. I chose patience, evidence, truth. And it worked. We didn't just destroy a broken system, we replaced it with something stronger, something better. I looked at Maya, the fiery woman who'd fought every step beside me, and lifted my glass. She raised hers too. "To peace and quiet," she said softly. We clinked glasses, the sound small but profound. And for the first time since the day we moved to Oak Crest, the silence held. "You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one, the truth that shatters everything you thought you knew."